Okay, everyone, good morning. Welcome to our discussion group, which is about bilingual dreaming and having an accent in a second language. So, the dynamic of this discussion group is that I am going to first ask you a general question, and from there, we are going to begin discussing more explicit points of the reading. Also, each of you has to participate in this discussion group, and you have about 1 or 2 minutes per participation, as we only have 20 minutes. So before we begin, do you have any questions about the dynamic? No? Okay. So then we're going to start with both readings. As I mentioned, it's about personality, emotions, and dreaming in bilinguals, and also having an accent. So first, to start off, I would like to know, what is an interesting or a salient point about these readings that you would like to mention? Something that left an impression on you. Ivan?
Well, I think they both were really interesting readings, especially the one about these personality traits that we determine based on the language. And I was just like having this discussion with myself about if it's either like like it mentions that is the context, but also like the personality that we provide to each of the languages, and like the personality that the languages provide on us. That was really interesting. And also the part of the dreaming about this, like the language that you choose or that you are supposed to dream on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ivan. I'll follow up with you right now after Karin's participation. Karin?
It was something that make me think about what my previous beliefs is that this change of personality that people say we have, but in the reading they mention that it's just you adjusting to the context you are in which you're using the language. So that's like a whole different word into a big difference between changing personalities or changing your attitudes or your or being able to perform in certain contexts. So in general, that was like changed my perspective related to this topic. So that was like the main point.
Thank you, Karin, and I'll follow up on your point after Christian.
Well, first of all, I like the readings a lot because they started with these beliefs about our personalities that they change when we speak another language. But as Ivan said, if it is not like that, our personality changes because of linguistic reasons, but because of social or cultural aspects that influence on how we behave, and that was really interesting to me. So I think that the readings were more like very critical, and they addressed these aspects that do not specifically have to do with, as I said, linguistic reasons, but the personal or social ones.
Perfect, Christian. Thank you so much. Rafa?
I think I have pretty much the same opinion. Like the biggest impression that I have from the reading is like this idea, or like this wrong idea that maybe we had that language shapes the language itself shapes how we speak, how we um, use the language with other people, but it's actually not. It's actually the context or the domain what actually shapes our behavior and the language, and not so much like language itself. So I think that was like the biggest impression that I had from the reading.
Excellent, Rafa. Thank you. So I can see that most of you were most, let's say, marked or impressed by this reading about the personality and emotions and dreaming. And so I have a question for you about this. Do you feel that your personality changes when you speak Spanish or English? And how would you explain this now that you have read this reading about the explanations?
Well, in here, I was thinking about that. It was like more a longer process. Like it's not only changing your personality, and sometimes we don't change our personality. It's just having the capacity of understanding the social context, understanding the language that you need to use. So I think it's more like an ability of being bicultural, being bilingual, and how you decide to use the language in which context, or how you modify the way you are speaking in order to, because of the context or the situation in which you are interacting. So I would think that my perspective in personality changing, what that some people mention when you are bilingual, has changed because of the reading, because of only your personality, maybe, or something different than your personality.
Thank you, Karin. And to kind of follow up on this, I think it's very interesting what you mentioned, that it's basically a myth, right? That is mentioned where you have two personalities and you change according to your language, but it has to do more with the context. So, my next question would be, do you have a concrete example of a time you have had to change your personality according to this context? Yes, Ivan, go ahead.
Okay, so I think that this comes really personal because I'm a person. Well, I was born in a border city such as Ciudad Juarez, so there's like going back and forth from El Paso to Juarez, and I was thinking in the reading that it says that there's a shift in attitudes and behaviors corresponding to a shift in situation context independent of language. And like we are all aware that we speak Spanish in Mexico and we speak English in Texas. And something that I have noticed is also like the traits that I provide to each of the languages. English goes more with like an academic persona that I have, and Spanish goes with more like the formal, especially when I'm trying to communicate with native speakers. So it has to do with the context, but like when I go to this store information, I try to use like I even use more like more academic language if I can misunderstand.
Okay, Ivan. So I think you're giving like some very concrete examples of how you feel more academic when you speak in English. And again, as you mentioned, this has to do with your context, right? Thank you, Christian.
Personality, but in my case, I use English more for academic purposes or for meetings, and in those cases, I speak more like in a more formal way. But when I am with my friends or when I am communicating casually, I use Spanish. Even though many informal expressions in English, or I have the opportunity to use that language, I prefer to use Spanish. But it is not because of uh, of a split personality that I have, but only because of the different domains we might have discussed. So I think that I use English for more academic purposes, and Spanish for everything that is more informal or casual.
Thank you, Christian. Rafa?
Yes, so I'm going back a little bit about Karin's answers, and what I was thinking is that maybe we need a new concept, like to identify what is really happening, because I don't think that we have like what Christian mentioned, like these split personalities. It's not like we completely change our mindset or like entirely our behaviors. I think we just modify who we are depending on the context, on the domain. So I was thinking person. It's more like I'm just modifying what I'm saying to who I'm saying it to and how I say it. So I think it's more like this idea of being yourself, but in different contexts, in different domains. I was thinking, like, for example, even if you're like monolingual, like a Spanish monolingual, well, my example is me being a teacher, an English teacher. The way I speak to my students, the way I speak as a student of an MA in English, the way I speak to my friends in English, it's so different, but it's still English. And it happens the same with Spanish. So I think it's not so much about like having like these split personalities, but changing accordingly to the context, the domain, the people that you're talking to. So let's come up with a new concept, guys.
Thank you, Rafa. Okay, that's good. That's great. Actually, you mentioned like again this perpetuation of a myth, right? That we have two different personalities when what's really happening is that you have to interact in different domains. And I think that you all gave very concrete and similar examples that have to do with the fact that we use English more in an academic setting, right? Which is something that almost all of us do. Since we live in Mexico, our interactions in English are mostly academic. Ivan, did you have another comment? Ivan?
Oh yes, just like I was thinking now that Rafa mentioned about like a new concept and also like this preparation of the myth. One thing that I could tell is like if we are looking for a new concept, we could see and say like the adaptation of the bilingual or of the language, because a very concrete example that came to my mind is like every time that you cross to the El Paso to the United States, there is the crossing border. There is an official, and like every single person switches their personality in that case. And it's not like you're turning into a different like a split personality, but it's more like you're adapting to the situation. You're aware of the authority of this person, and I think it has to do also with the authority of of an official. You're going to change the way that you speak with your parents, with your teachers, with an official. You're not going to speak the same way that you do with your friends.
Okay, thank you, Ivan. Again, a very concrete example of when you have to not change your personality, but adapt to the domain, to the context that you're interacting to. And I think you mentioned something that is mentioned or discussed in the reading about the accents, how you will kind of change your accent or the language that you use according to how you want to be perceived. So this takes me to my next question, which is about the accents. Can you provide any situations where accents have played a role? And what explanation do you think you could give us for this situation? Karin.
Okay, so I was like the whole time I was thinking in Sofia Vergara, as Rafa mentioned last time, that she does that in order to like let people know that she belongs to a certain community. And in my case, I think I kind of did the opposite when I was in China. Like I was trying to not show my accent just because over there it was like you are from United States and you need to make people believe you belong to that place. So my says at the beginning I was trying to do this American accent, like stop doing the Latin, like you don't belong to Mexico, things like that, in order to fit, which is something that also it is also mentioned in order to fit into a community. In this case, the like the foreigners community. But there was a certain point in which you start feeling like more uh, comfortable in with the people you are around. So this at the end of this foreign community, which I wanted to fit in, was my comfort zone. So I just sometimes when I let myself, I started just some words sound like very in Spanish, or I marked some sounds that were like influenced by Spanish. So I think that it in as what was the most important from the reading is the belonging or not belonging to us, to a community, because of.
Thank you, Karin. So you mentioned a specific situation where the prestige language, we can say, was English here. And so if you wanted to be perceived as a professional, then you needed to demonstrate this English accent that you fit into the English speaking community because of your job. Thank you, Karin. Ivan?
Yes, I was thinking like I think that Karim mentioned all received this comment from our students that they don't want to have an accent, or that they want to have their real English accent, but it does not exist. We have accents all over the world, variations of English. And I was thinking of an example. It did not happen to me per se,
We
but
can hear you. Yeah.
I think the Zoom call kicked out Ivan, but he was discussing about an academic conference that you went to, where the presenter had like a very strong accent in Spanish, but it didn't mean, that they didn't know about their area of discussion or their area of study. It was simply they had an accent because their first language was Spanish. And as is mentioned in the reading, your first language and its pronunciation will have an influence on your second language and how you pronounce. Thank you, Ivan. And let's go with Christian.
Regarding Karin's example, I think that when it comes to identity, one can have an accent that might be either notable or unperceived. I mean, I think that in the first case, to have a not decide, but they might not mind if their accent is noticed, because they want to reinforce their identity. We see, for example, Sofia Vergara. She says that it doesn't matter if she has a strong accent, because she's from Colombia, right? But I think she's from Colombia. And on the other hand, we have these people who have an almost unperceived accent because they don't want to be noticed, or they want to fit in the context where they are in. So I think that our identity and our beliefs, or how we want to be in a certain context, influence on our accent itself.
Yes, Christian. Thank you. Let's go with Rafa for your closing statement. Rafa?
Yes, I just want to say that they mentioned on the reading this that one's knowledge is not reflective, or one's knowledge and one's accent is not perfect, but it was mentioning. Um, so we have been talking about this idea of like one trying to hide or show their accent, either in whatever situation. And I was thinking about the expectation of other people's, the expectation that other people have on you. Like they see you and they think that you probably have an accent. This happened to me twice. Once when I was in the States, and once here in Mexico when I was having a video call. People thought I was Hindi just because the way I looked, and they were expecting like a Hindi sort of like English accent, and they were sort of shocked, and they let me know that they were shocked that I didn't have a Hindi accent in English. So that was just my comment.
Thank you, Rafa, for your example. And yes, I think that here, right now, in this discussion group, we have kind of talked about some aspects of being bilingual that sometimes can be overlooked or perpetuated by certain myths, as I was mentioning at the beginning. And well, one of them has to do with this personality. And we have established that it's not that we have different personalities, but that we act according to our context or our domain. And this also ties in with us specifically with our academic domain and the accents that we may or may not have. And as Karin mentioned, like the accent that she chooses to use to be perceived as someone who is knowledgeable in English in order to preserve a job, or Rafa, who talks about these expectations that people